people around me weren't well off, you know. The women had beehives and wore coats that were on HP.
Two lovers entwined, pass me by, and heaven knows I'm miserable now.
It was a hard life, really, but you have to find beauty. I think it's an innate human necessity, so if you're in a grim place, you would just find the beauty.
In my life, oh, why do I give valuable time to people who don't care if I live or die?
These records were so vivid and romantic and joyous. They were the revenge of the deserted northern places.
There's lots of snogging on the bridges and feeding people up on leather, and there's ice in the sink where we bathed. What kind of line's that? Where do you get that from?
Together, Morrissey and Marr were the most significant songwriting partnership of the 80s. On top of their 4 studio albums, they crafted a stream of standalone singles, including William, It Was Really Nothing, Shoplifters of the World Unite, and Panic.
They all skip along those tunes, they're all toe tappers. I think that's the great thing about that band is, like, you know, they had these really up tunes that Morrissey would then kind of put his slant on, and Morrissey's lyrics are all very sarcastic. It's about being on the dole and it's about being kind of an outsider. That kind of collision of those two things is what made the Smiths what they were, I think.
The hands-off approach of Rough Trade, the band's independent record label, allowed Morrissey and Marr complete control over the Smiths' music and image.
Everything about them was like, we do it our way. You know, Morrissey did the sleeves. You know, Johnny was left to his own devices and not told by an A&R man, that will be the next single you're going to record. It would be up to Morrissey and Marr to decide what song they wanted to record as their next single.
That's the kind of band we were, you know. We didn't have A&R men, we didn't have people interfering in the music. So we were very in that self-sufficient thing. I mean, we were really independent.
In the mid-1980s, the Smiths were at the head of an entire subculture. Indie music took in groups as diverse as the Jesus and Mary Chain, the Fall, the Cocteau Twins, and the Wedding Present. The music itself was self-consciously anti-commercial and difficult to seek out.
And it was really exciting to sample it, you know. I used to go to Piccadilly Records in Manchester on a Saturday morning with these slightly arrogant guys, like in High Fidelity, behind the counter would kind of snigger if you bought the wrong thing. But the idea that you were buying into this world, it really felt like you were onto something that 99% of people didn't know about.
You know, being involved in indie music meant that you were kind of making a statement, which is about how honest you are and where you feel like you fit in the world. And being odd and being weird and being different is good. Let's celebrate that.
Indie, independent music represented almost like a membership card of the outsider gang for a lot of people too. You know, by listening to that music, you were saying, no, I'm one of these guys, not one of those guys.
Of all British indie bands in the 80s, it was the Smiths who inspired the most devotion. Their army of fans, referred to by Morrissey as his disciples, were the biggest outsider gang of all. As the Smiths' popularity grew, the band were careful to stick to modest-sized venues. Their gigs always had a sense of occasion, with the group marching on stage to the strains of Prokofiev as they greeted their audience eyeball to eyeball.
There was never a barrier of, we're up here and you're down there. We're great, listen to this, you belong down there.
Quite often there was physically no sort of no gap between the audience and the stage, because every night they ended up on it.
It'd whip up sometimes because we'd be trying to give people what they wanted, they'd be coming back with, you know, screaming and crying, going crazy, and then that'd spur us on to kind of give it even more. I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it.
Rather than doing like a massive stadium gig, when you're 25 foot up and you can't even see the heads of the people and, you know, at the front of you, we used to prefer the little sweaty ones, really, where you can see the whites of the eyes of the audience.
And in love, the good people love. Yes, we may be hidden by rags, but with something they never had.
By 1986, the Smiths had become one of Britain's most established bands. A deal with major label EMI had been agreed, and the band were playing larger and larger venues in the US. But such success brought its own pressures and doubts.
The labels were always keen to say, well, you know, one more tour and you're going to be the next U2. But not everybody wants to be U2.
Oh, mother, I can feel the soil falling over my head.
I mean, I remember when we were in America, me and Morrissey having a conversation about how we did 3 nights at Universal Amphitheatre, and we were both talking about how Roxy Music and T-Rex had never got to do that, you know. And we were a bit scared then, really. It wasn't like, oh right, we're so big we got to split up, because we weren't that big, but we were bigger than our heroes.
In the summer of 1987, Johnny Marr shocked both his bandmates and the indie world when he walked out of the Smiths.
I remember behind the NME that Wednesday morning that said the Smiths had split up and felt orphaned. I mean, like a lot of people did. That sounds ridiculous, I know, and it sounds like a very Smiths fan thing to say. I felt so terrible. But they had been our lifeline. They had been the thing that we loved through an incredibly, uniquely miserable period in British history. And they were our band.
Sad veiled bride, please be happy.
A whole era of Manchester music was coming to an end, and a new one just beginning. The Smiths' demise coincided with the coming of house music, a sound fueled by the new drug of the moment, ecstasy.
In the 80s, we all hunched our shoulders and thought everything was terrible. And then people you know started coming back from the hacienda having taken this drug that everyone was talking about. And they seemed sort of euphorically well adjusted. A real sea change, actually. The whole thing was sort of turned on its head. It really felt like that. Logically, we'd gone from one thing to its opposite.
It was kind of a psychedelic time. It was the second summer of love. And people, you couldn't really listen to acid house relentlessly all the time. People go to raves and have a great time to acid house, but they still wanted guitar music and songs they could sing along to when they were at home or when they were coming back from the raves.
A new wave of Manchester groups would give indie music a psychedelic twist. The Stone Roses led the way.
Stone Roses' early songs, there was a sense of, you know, the Byrds. There was a sense of that kind of West Coast psychedelia. And then the other thing which the Stone Roses did was that they had rhythms at the forefront of the music, which, again, indie bands tended not to. It's all about the rhythms just propelling you forward and the momentum.